Good morning. I'm Brian Blackwelder with Blackwelder Pump here in DeLand, Florida. We run a service company here in Central Florida from the East Coast to into Eustis, and north and south from Palm Coast all the way down to Mims and into Seminole County. Today I want to go over some ideas or some information about well systems, particularly the submersible well systems and how they work. We get a lot of calls from people that, my water's out, my well's not working, flip breakers, I've done all of this. And I want to go over some real easy stuff to check before you actually dispatch a service tech to your home. Maybe it might save you a couple bucks, it might save you the grief, and it'll help you learn a little bit about your pump system. Generally, a submersible pump is going to be down inside the well, and there's a couple different styles. Most of your submersibles will be what we consider a 3-wire pump, which basically means that they'll use a control box similar to this or similar to this to control the pump body itself. It'll have capacitors, relays, and what it does is it converts power into a running format down in the hole for the pump itself. What we see a lot is we see reset buttons that are popped, dilapidated conditions inside these control boxes. So I just want to familiarize you with what you have. This is your second line of defense in the hole. Generally, your pressure switch will be your first point of contact. That's where the power comes in. From here, it'll go out of this switch and into your actual control box. We've done another video on our website that goes over the pressure switch contact points and how that works, so you're more than welcome to watch that. What I want to do is I want to go over these control boxes and what you're looking at or looking for. Generally, these boxes will either be mounted directly on top of the well itself on a riser pipe with the wire coming into it and then your power feeding into it also. They can be remoted in a remote spot, maybe where your bladder tank is, if that's where your pressure switch is. What you're looking for is the size of box or the style of box you have. There's a lot of different manufacturers. There's Pentair, which we have on the table today. There's Goulds, there's Franklin, there's F&W. We work on pretty much all of them and any of them. We just happen to have these here for reference point today. So what we're looking for on your bigger horsepower units, your 1.5 horse, your 2 horses, your 3 horses, your 5 horses, and even some of your 1 horses will have some type of reset on that box generally. This would be a 1 horse box, which is a standard box, and there's a couple different manufacturers of these. These boxes do not have a reset. So if you come across this style of box in your pump system and you've made sure you have power coming through your pressure switch, you could have a problem with the relay or the capacitor in the box, or the problem could be down in the hole. Most good companies can diagnose this pretty simply, whether it be put a new control box on it and then do an amperage test on the motor once you get it running, or make sure that the bar and all your connections are good and that you're getting good continuity through the feed. Most of these use a bus bar inside of here. Again, this is something you should let a professional do, but these points of contact make a big difference once they go into these bars. So if anything burns or looks charred, if you pull this apart and you're seeing charring or corrosion or anything like that, it's definitely time to go ahead and put a phone call into a service professional and have them come out and look at it. These other units, generally they'll have a reset on them. The first thing you want to do is push on these resets. We don't have a way to stimulate the reset to be able to show how it works, but normally you'll push on it very hard and you should hear a ting or a pop if it actually is popped. Some of the bigger units will have 2 resets on them. Again, you can push them individually. You don't have to push them simultaneously, but if you push them really hard and it pops or tings, a lot of times you'll hear the pump come back on. If you're doing this over and over and over, if you're pushing these resets or having to reset these on your pump over and over, you have a bigger problem. You either have a control component problem in the control box itself, you have an amperage draw issue in the well, or something to that effect. My suggestion to any customer is resetting it once is a fluke. Resetting it every other day or every 3 days, you have a service problem, and all you're doing is prolonging the inevitable. My best suggestion to you, a lot of times it can just be a control component in the control box. If you're having to reset over and over, set up a service call with whoever your service provider is, whether it's us or someone else. Get them out there and let them do a check on the pump itself and see where your actual problem is coming in. If you have a control component that's not working correctly in here, it can send incorrect voltage to your pump motor and it can create more damage than good. A lot of times a box like this is a few $100 fix versus spending thousands to replace a pump. So, you know, don't just sit there and keep resetting the reset over and over. If you're having to do that, you have another problem. These boxes here, which are typically your 1 horse and under, these, all it takes is a relay failure or a capacitor failure and the pump won't work. The only other type of submersible that we haven't talked about here today is a standard 2-wire. A 2-wire is going to have your wire coming from the power into this pressure switch. Then from the pressure switch, it's going to be a direct conduit lead directly into the well. Those type of situations, a failure is a failure. You don't have any break point or spot to be able to diagnose in between. At that point, you're going to have to contact a professional, have them send a truck out and check it out and see what's going on. Generally going to see is this style of box next to a tank, usually a pressure gauge below it right there. And this will normally be very close to your tank if you have a submersible pump with a control box or without a control box. In this type of scenario, same thing. The pressure switch points feed in and out, but from here it will actually go into a control box. These are some typical control boxes. Some of these control boxes have resets and some of them do not. Like your 1.5 horse units and above generally will either have a reset on the front or they'll have a reset underneath the box, maybe on each side, depending on the vendor or the brand of product, or front and back. Normally these resets will pop if there's some type of high amperage situation, short situation, something to that effect. This is something you also want to check if you get past the pressure switch and you realize you've got power coming past there. Your next stop on a submersible would be one of these items here, would be to check and see if you have a reset that's popped. These will generally have a button on the front. You don't have to take the lid off, you can push it through these. These boxes will generally be mounted on the wall and your resets will be underneath, like I said, either side to side or front to back. Again, something simple, you know, that we go over multiple times a week with customers over the phone, but it's good to know what you have and what's going on. That being said, these smaller boxes like this, these are all internal components, so you really can't do a whole lot with that as far as a reset or anything. If you see this style box and you're getting power through and it's still not running, you're going to have to contact the service technician or someone that's a little more skilled to be able to go through it and determine where your actual problem is from. But that's the type of situations you're going to see with your controls. This is going to be your first line of defense when it comes from the power supplier, from your breaker to any well pump. It's going to go through this type of switch unless you have a variable frequency drive or something like that. And again, that's a whole different ball of wax. But 90% of your well systems that are pressurized, that are for house supply, are going to use this style of apparatus. There's another version that's a little bigger. Usually that's what we consider a heavy duty pressure switch, and it's on a much larger version. But you know, there's different manufacturers of these switches. The other one switch I want to highlight that I haven't discussed, and I don't actually have one in front of me, is a lever style pressure switch. These are sold a lot in the home stores or the big box stores. They're what we consider a low pressure switch. They have a cutout at 30 PSI. So if you come out and your switch has a metal bar that comes out and a little lever on the side, that's generally what we would consider a low pressure switch. Those switches, once the pressure drops below 30 PSI, they automatically lock out and will not re-engage until they're re-engaged manually. You have to turn the lever a partial turn. It engages the points. Once the pressure comes above 30, then the pump will stay engaged. I don't suggest those type of pressure switches usually for a domestic supply. They're normally used in a situation where you have large volume irrigation where you're trying to stop. If you have a break or a line break, it shuts it off. In a house supply, we normally don't endorse them because we see a lot of problems with them. doesn't mean it doesn't work, but anytime you can stick to a more common general pressure switch, you're better off. You know, our trucks are available 24/7, 365 days a year. We make ourselves readily available for that out of water in the evening, during the day. So anything we can do to help you, please let us know. You can find us on our website, blackwelderpump.net, or we're available on all your Google phone numbers, 386-738-5338. That's our main number that rings into our DeLand office. And again, that'll get you a tech pretty much anywhere in a 40-mile radius of DeLand. So if we can help you, please let us know. Have a great day. Thank you.